On a crisp fall day, a triumphant leader returned home from a major foreign summit to cheering crowds. The Conservative Prime Minister of the United Kingdom had just negotiated a huge deal. Europe was in a dangerous and fragile place, recovering from what was then called the Great War and confronting the menace of rising powers that threatened to bring on another world war. He stepped onto the airport tarmac, waving this precious paper, which contained the historic agreement that promised to bring lasting peace, not just to the United Kingdom, but to the whole world. The agreement, he said, was, quote, symbolic of the desire of our peoples to never go to war with one another again. Later that day, he called the agreement Peace in Our Time. The Prime Minister was Neville Chamberlain. The day was September 30th, 1938, the deal he'd brokered with Adolf Hitler. Its failure was so spectacular and so costly that the whole concept of Chamberlain's diplomatic strategy in signing that agreement, appeasement, is synonymous with failure, and with that failure in particular. You will literally find a photo of Neville Chamberlain making that agreement alongside Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini in the encyclopedia definition of appeasement. But the appeasement strategy had begun and had been failing before that fateful day in September of 1938. In March of 1938, Chamberlain's appeasement strategy saw the UK standing by as Hitler, having already seized Austria, quickly set his sights on neighboring Czechoslovakia. Then in May of 1938, in an effort to sway fascist Italy away from Nazi Germany and curry favor with Mussolini to help deter Hitler, Chamberlain deployed an appeasement policy toward Mussolini and recognized Italy's conquest of Ethiopia. That appeasement effort was an unmitigated failure, as Mussolini and Hitler quickly became even closer allies. But then in September, Chamberlain, along with France's Prime Minister Edouard Daladier, agreed that the only way to prevent a wider war and to ensure peace would be to again accede to Hitler's wishes and for Czechoslovakia to cede territory to Germany, specifically the Sudetenland, an area which ran along Czechoslovakia's border with Germany and Austria, which, as I just mentioned, had recently been incorporated into Germany. At the time, the Sudetenland was home to several million people of German origin who spoke German, and that's what Hitler cited as his reason to take the territory for Germany, to extend an umbrella of German protection over German speakers in other lands. Following frequent trips by Chamberlain to Germany for one-on-one talks with Hitler, at the end of September 1938, Chamberlain and Daladier met with Mussolini and Hitler in Munich. They agreed to a written plan put forth by Mussolini, with whom Chamberlain and Daladier were still hoping to gain favor, which essentially granted all of Hitler's demands and ceded the Sudetenland to Germany in exchange for Hitler's promise of no further aggression. The Czechoslovakians were never consulted and afterwards were given a choice: either submit to the demands of the deal or fight the Germans alone, which was made even tougher to accept given that Czechoslovakia had a military alliance with France. Knowing that there was no way they could repel Germany's overwhelming military alone and hoping to retain the rest of their independence, the Czechoslovaks submitted. 6 months later, Hitler took the rest of Czechoslovakia. Just under a year after that agreement was signed, Hitler invaded Poland. The UK and France declared war on Germany 2 days after the invasion of Poland, and that marked the beginning of World War II in the European theater. As Encyclopedia Britannica puts it, the Munich Agreement has become known as the flag bearer for the futility of appeasing expansionist totalitarian states. Now the futility of the Munich Agreement is being cited as a warning for the way Donald Trump appears willing to appease Vladimir Putin and his expansionist desires in Ukraine. People are noticing striking similarities: Trump's unilateral meeting with Putin and Chamberlain's frequent one-on-one meetings with Hitler, Trump's apparent willingness to quickly give in to Putin's demands, and Chamberlain's willingness to give in to Hitler's demands. The fact that Ukraine, like Czechoslovakia, could be left out of negotiations of a final deal, all of which is leading students of history to wonder whether giving Putin parts of Ukraine could, rather than satisfying a power-hungry dictator, fuel future ambitions for land elsewhere outside of Ukraine. Whether this could all set the stage for another potential invasion and a wider war, and whether appeasing Putin now may not mean peace later.